The kidnapping occurred the afternoon of February 9th. The ransom calls started the next day. We're falling apart. We're still trying to figure out. There's still a lot of stuff going on actively with the authorities, but then at the same time, it's like we have to do whatever we can to create awareness. Our first logical reaching out was to the governor in Colima, and our leads went completely ignored. And then you dig a little bit, and then you find out why. They take bribes. There is power in numbers. If we sit back, we cross our arms, then we just give in to how the system has always worked for them.
If this was Bill Gates' daughter, I'm sure there would be planes flying into Mexico.
I really need the help from anyone who hears this in any way, shape, or form that they feel that they can help. Please do so.
Today, we have Zoey Lopez here to speak about the harsh reality of kidnappings in Mexico and how we can help her find her mother. Zoey, thank you for being here, and our prayers and hope are with you the whole way. And let's try to do what we can to help find your mom. I'm going to start with a difficult question, and that is to take you back to the emotional moments where you found out that your mom was in fact kidnapped, and why this happened, what you learned in that first initial moments.
Thank you for having me. It's definitely something that's embedded in your head. The moment, the feeling, almost every little detail. I was working, happened to get home that afternoon, and I decided something that I rarely do was to actually rest. I said, I'm going to take a nap. It was late in the afternoon, and I'm very close to my sisters. We're 7 children. It's five girls, 2 boys. And I was on just on a normal phone call with my sister, and we were discussing how we were going to celebrate my dad's birthday, because his birthday's on February 11th, and that was February 9th. We hung up the phone. It was nothing. I said, look, I can't do anything. I'm going to be busy this weekend, but we can plan for another week or so. The phone rang immediately. We hung up, and maybe a minute later, I received another phone call from her, and I'm assuming she just forgot to tell me something, So I'm like, okay, I was going to nap, but let me pick up. I picked up and I heard her, and she was frantic. I could just hear her screaming. And she was just saying, Mom, Mom, Mom. And I'm like, what? What happened? But I could hear the panic in her voice. So I jumped out of bed, and I just kept telling her, what? And she's like, Mom's been kidnapped. Mom's been kidnapped. And that's all she said. You go into a blur. You go into an instant, your body goes into shock. I remember feeling my body just tense. And I just kind of walked. I made my way through the hallway, and I could just feel my chest and my stomach. I started immediately feeling like I was going to get sick, like just pass out. And I was like, what do you mean? How do you know? All these questions start coming about who told you, where, who? And it was just, she just kept screaming, and she just kept saying they kidnapped her. And I just, from that moment, from the bedroom to the hall, through the hallway, I just you feel like you lose your mind, like you're just not here anymore. And I did. Literally, I just collapsed. I dropped to my knees. I don't remember ever hanging up with her, but and in an instance, I gathered myself again quickly, and I went to my son, and I just looked at him and I said, they kidnapped Mom. And I kind of just, you lose it for that moment, because it's an instant fear. And then at the same time, it didn't take too long, maybe, I don't know, it seemed like an eternity that I was probably on the floor, but I got up and I just thought, okay, who do we call now? And my immediate instinct was to call her, to call my mom's phone. My mom lives in a very small town, 300 people max, and most of the people in that town are family. So, after trying her phone, There is no reception. That's also important to note. There is no actual phone connection there. All our communication is done through Messenger, so everything through social media. So we tried that, and obviously it just rang and rang and rang. And then the phone, everybody just, it's like mayhem. Everyone starts calling each other, and what do we do? Is this real? You're still in shock. Is this really happening? After multiple attempts to her phone and, to family, and it kind of just trickles down. Everyone starts, calling each other. I started calling people that we know in the town. Does anyone know? Or at this point, I don't think anybody was like really answering. And I finally got a hold of someone, and they said, yeah, we're here and the house is surrounded. And we're trying to like make sense also of the time frame. Like, how is a house surrounded with Marines and the local state, department, and then you have the army there, and then so it's like, how is all of this going on in a time? Like, your thoughts are just going quick. How? It's a town that's not in this. It's not in the city. It's at least 35 to 40 minutes away. How's everyone there already? How do they know? How are we just finding out now? But it's the communication. They live in a very rural, like, just secluded area. It's not that easy to get that communication, But by the time we actually made contact with someone, they said, look, the house is surrounded. They took her from the front of the house. She was home. My mom loves watering her plants and keeping, her house very nice. And she was watering her plants when they came and took her. Luckily, I mean, now looking back, it just kind of like, how did anyone find out? Because my mom's home, also, a lot of people questions are, how did anybody see? Why didn't the neighbors see? It's not that type of town. It's the house is here. And then, you drive up or walk a little bit more, and then there's another house, but they're not facing the same direction. Unfortunately, to the front of my mother's home or to the side, there's no homes. It's just land. It's a property that they use to, I think, grow trees and for furniture. And on the other side, it's facing the backside of the house. So there's no one there. It's an older aunt. She's probably in her 80s. She doesn't hear, well. It is important to note, though, that my mom's house is the only house in the town that provides Wi-Fi. They're the only ones in the town that have Wi-Fi. So it was very common for just the town kids, everyone actually, to just go and stay within the perimeter of the house on the outside to get her Wi-Fi signal. On that day, we were lucky enough that there was a young gentleman, that he was doing just that. He was connected to, to his social media, just sitting there, and he was able to, unfortunately for him, fortunate for us, he witnessed the kidnapping.
So he was there when this happened. I mean, you're talking about a person who saw the whole thing pan out.
Pretty much, yeah. He says that, my mom's super talkative. She's very bubbly and charming and just very inviting. And also, as a pastime there, the only thing really to do, they gathered a bunch of chickens, and they have a little, like, a chicken coop, and they sell eggs from the house. Not, just like for the townspeople. So it's very common to see people come into the property and come and buy eggs, so that wasn't anything out of the norm. Or was it anything out of the norm to see her talking to someone? So what he witnessed, he says he was towards the back of the property on his phone, and from what we know is, he's like, I didn't look up until I heard a slam. So there's a small gate from the yard to enter the house, to enter the property. So he says he heard like a loud slam, and he's like, when I looked up, he's like, one person had walked into the property. He was well dressed, and he kind of just like made small talk with her. He's like, I never looked up, because it's not unusual. He's like, your mom talks to everyone, so it wasn't like, anything out of the norm. He's like, until I heard like a loud slam. He's like, and then I heard a car come in. My mom was apparently talking to one male, And then a van drove in. They backed up. Now we know these details, more clarity now. They backed in, and two men with hoods jumped out of the van. They had face masks on. Apparently they were covered. They jumped out of the van, and there was some kind of exchange with my mom. The witness did say that when he did look up, my mom was on the floor. He's like, I don't know if they pushed her down or if they hit her or if she fainted or if she kind of just threw herself on the floor so that she wouldn't, get taken. And at that point, they were kind of like struggling to pick her up. A third person, a heavy-set man, jumps out of the van, and they covered her mouth and they carried her into the van and drove off. It isn't, two cars were involved. At this point, we're hearing some of these details and everything's happening super fast. We're getting these details over the phone. Like, yes, it was, three men or it was two men. And then kind of the story is just like, how's all of this going on? There's only one road into that town and one road out. There is ways that you can either go up, to different hills and it leads to smaller towns. But in order to get to Pueblo Nuevo, there's just one way in, one way out. Everything happened really quick. By the time we found out, it had been possibly 1 to 2 hours from when it had occurred. Maybe 1 hour, I believe. And then the mayhem started as far as, how do we get help here? We are in the United States. What do we do to help her? She's out there. Who do we call? Do we call the authorities in Mexico? Do we call the authorities here? And it got to the point where one person jumped into my mind because they travel a lot. And I was like, okay, what happens when a U.S. citizen, something like this, or, someone gets in trouble or there's an emergency and they're on the other side of the border? What do we do? Who do we contact? And one of the first things is like, you have to call the embassy now. Like, you have to contact the embassy immediately. That was an absolute nightmare. It was phone call after phone call. And it was, if you've ever called, you get the prompts and it's just stay on the phone, dial 1, dial 0. And it was just one after another and it wouldn't stop. There was no answers. Even when we did get a live person, it's extremely frustrating because you're frantic on this side saying, it's almost like you're in shock. You're telling the other person on the line, my mother was kidnapped. What do you do? And it's just like, oh, well, we're going to transfer you. This is who you need to speak to. And it took almost 24 hours to get a hold of someone. It was horrible. It was horrible.
And where did they transfer you to? What department eventually took over?
I think it's like I don't know if it's like an anti-kidnapping unit that they have, or yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I kept being transferred to the same, and it got so like frustrating trying to reach anyone at the embassy that I decided, I think at that point in between the phone calls, I even called our local police department. I was like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how many voicemails do we need to leave to inform that there's a U.S. citizen who has been kidnapped, After a few hours, I believe it was till the next day, we received a phone call. Or I called, I kept insisting, and please, someone give me a call. This happened yesterday. Finally get someone on the phone, and they stated immediately, like, we're going to put you in contact with the right people. The FBI will contact you. We never got, a call back. There was someone at my door that afternoon.
So that's where things picked up. Basically, the FBI got involved, and then from there, it is a process. And when was this?
Yeah, so the kidnapping occurred February 9th, the afternoon of February 9th, and the next day is when we were in contact already. The ransom calls started the next day also. Okay,
so now we know for sure that it was a legitimate kidnapping for ransom because you got ransom calls.
Correct.
What is a ransom call like? I'm sure 99% of the world have never received those. The phone rings, you pick up, what happens?
The phone rings, and at this point, everyone's gathered at my house. And we're all just everybody's still making phone calls, phone calls to Mexico, family, how can they help? We're just trying to put our brains together. That morning, my brother one of my younger brothers, he's here and we're all just together and his phone rings, but it's a number from Mexico. And it's a number that we don't communicate with anyone there. Our lives are here. Yes, our parents, they lived out there, but the only communication we had with anyone on the other side of the border is with my parents, So to see a phone number coming to my younger brother was, we knew, I don't know, it's almost like you kind of just go into like a panic. Who's calling you? Who is it? And as soon as he picked up, it was another instinct of mine. And I've been questioning, like, how did you know how to do that? I didn't know why I did it, but I started recording. I picked up my phone and I started recording. I don't know if it's something like maybe in the back of my head I seen in a movie, or I don't know. I honestly don't, till the day I'm like, why it happened, I don't know, but I'm glad it did, And he picks up the phone and he just kind of, hello. And then we just hear a very muffled voice on the other side, and it's a male. And they direct themselves to him by name. So we know, okay, like, how the heck did they get his number? This has to be mom. Like, she has to be with these, whoever this is, right? And yeah, it was an immediate, we have your mom and we want X amount within 24 hours, or things can, they never directly threaten her life at that point. It was more of a, you better do it or things, can I cuss? Okay. Yeah, or it can, exactly, or everything can go to, hell. And then it was just an immediate hang up. What do you do? Everybody goes into a panic. And I think at that point, we still had not been contacted. It was the morning of the 10th. So we hadn't been contacted yet by anyone, FBI, embassy, no one. As soon as that happened, make the phone call, stay through the prompts, leave another voicemail, and then inform there's been a ransom that's been asked. And I think that that's where it really set in, like, to everyone. This is real.
And so from that moment that you received a ransom, and from the moment where you get into a position where, you're thinking, what do we do? The FBI hasn't showed up yet to give you guidance or to direct you. I mean, are you thinking we have to come up with the money? How do we get mom? Or, I mean, what's going through the family setting right now until that afternoon?
Everyone's thinking we have to leave. We have to go and look for her. I mean, honestly, those are the thoughts that are running through your head. Like, we got to go, but go where? Where do we go? The only home that we trust is their home, my parents' home, my mom's home. How do we get there? There's no phone service there, so we're not going to be of any, like, that's not going to be useful to us, being in an area where, we don't, where can we connect? How can we communicate with people? And honestly, at this point, everybody's like, can we trust the government? Are we really, like, doing this with the Mexican government? Can we, can we trust them? What if we, as soon as we get there, we're in immediate danger? What if that's the whole point? That let's bring some more of the family down here, So everyone's at this point like, who's going, who's not going, who's calling, start calling, your anyone. So everybody's just kind of going frantic. Everyone is crying. I mean, it was just after that first call, I think it just hit everybody like a ton of bricks. Everybody was here. Everybody heard it. And everybody, everyone had different reactions. I was kind of just in shock. Like, I went into this mode, and I think my brother did as well. Like, we got to try to keep it together and try to be like, what do we do next? These people asked for money. We don't have this amount, not even close. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they think we're rich. Why would they think that we're rich? And then everything's like, well, why would they think this? Like, why would they take mom? And then it's immediately, you know what? She was by herself. She's a U.S. citizen. She looks a certain way. She has blonde hair, green eyes. She's light skinned. We're like, okay, here you go. We are literally falling into the stereotype or the misconception that because if you're from the United States, you must have money. And then you put that amount, what was asked for, and you just said, there's no way that these people know, like, the reality of our lives. Like, the reason why they moved out there is because it's cheaper, they're retired. They can live comfortable over there.
Zoe, going to one thing you said about, the kidnappers asking for ransom. I mean, this is coming from here's a woman who we know is American. She lives in this town, because news travels fast. And so, it was a target essentially. And the target was based on misconception, misinformation. A lot of people, I've traveled through many countries, not just Mexico, many countries in the Latin American world. And as soon as you're from Cuba all the way to Argentina, as soon as you're American
Right.
or Canadian, one of those two, you're automatically looked at as wealthy because to them,
Narrative.
$10,000 is still a lot of money. Whereas, in California, $10,000 doesn't really get you anywhere. So, they take that, but then they elevate it to this point where they think everybody in California, lives in a mansion, has a pool, and drives a Rolls Royce because that's what they see on media. And unfortunately, social media kind of pushes that thing out. And then, and beside that, it's also the matter of access to money. So in a lot of poorer countries, they think that in the US and Canada, you just walk into a bank and say, I need $1 million. And they're like, okay, here, sign these documents and, take the $1 million and there you go. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Or my mom's been kidnapped. I need $1 million.
Exactly.
And somehow the bank, says, oh yeah, sure. No problem. You've got good credit. We'll give you the $1 million. They just don't understand the narrative on this side. And unfortunately, these are not the high-level organized crime syndicates of the Latin American world or any other world, because those people know very well because they move their monies through banks in the US and Canada. They buy real estate there. They've built Miami, so they know how the systems work. It's the lower end of the barrel where these are, little thugs from neighborhood places trying to make a name for themselves, trying to do a couple of little quick moves here and there to say, yeah, we're going to kidnap this lady. They're going to give us $1 million. And they've already calculated what cars they're going to buy, what houses they're going to buy. And they're just lost. And unfortunately, it just happens that your mom gets caught in this situation of their craziness. Now, going to what you've done along this year, I mean, how have you been trying to move this forward? Because the authorities only do so much, and I don't even want to get into that, but there is a lot of bureaucracy, and only so much gets done. So at the end of the day, when it's family, when it's your mom, you're going to do everything, right? You're going to just drop your life and do whatever needs to be to help her, to save her, in a sense. What have you done?
Yeah, you immediately you start thinking, just like how you touched, like, wait a minute, they really do, or this amount that's being asked for is not attainable. It's not attainable at all. Even if we had a week, it's not possible. So immediately you just start thinking, okay, what are we going to do to gather as much as we can and basically be real and truthful about what we have available and what you can send. A lot of, I didn't understand that you can't just send money. That's not how it works. That's not real life. You have to, there's only, they cap you at, I believe, $900 is the max amount that you can send without being questioned. And it's like, wait, you want to send how much to who and to where? How? And you're asking not to tell anyone. So how are we supposed to gather money if we can't tell anyone? How am I supposed to get any kind of help if we can't say anything, So you just kind of like scramble. And like I said, you have part of the family that's freaking out and they just can't keep it together and their thoughts are nowhere, My dad's over here, he's hyperventilating every time the phone rings and, feeling sick. And then, you just kind of go into, I think we just immediately went into fight mode. Yes, we were falling apart. Yes, we were super scared. But then we also thought, let's try to keep it together and think, how do we get money? How much? It was literally grab my purse. What do I have cash? Everybody start throwing what you have. And then that's literally how much can somebody get out of the bank? Get everything out. And That's literally what we did. And then the phone calls just kept coming. And then it was weeks of, I think that it is important for your audience to understand, and that this didn't happen in a day or two. The phone calls were relentless. It almost felt like it was like a form of torture, in the middle of the night. Not that we were sleeping, or not that, literally everyone staying together. And
of course, yeah, it's not like you're at the movies and the phone rings. Obviously you're in a lot of distress, and this just kept adding pressure to the situation.
It was really bad.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And so, you're not a billionaire in the US. These people did not kidnap your mom because they saw you on media or the news, or CNN or Oprah doing an interview with you or anything like that. So they just assumed, like we said, mistakenly, that you must be somehow wealthy. Now, the fact being that you're not wealthy, how has this affected your life? I mean, you have a family, and even your extended family, your sisters and your brothers and everybody. I'm talking about work, everything, social life, whatever it may be. How has this deteriorated your situation, and where has it led to, essentially?
Everything comes to a complete standstill. At some point this happened on a Thursday. So you kind of had the whole weekend. Everybody just kind of called in sick the next day. We can't say anything. So no one knows at this point, nothing. And once the first ransom call came in, it was just ongoing. And it wasn't one day. It was, okay, now we're going into Monday. Now we're at day 5. Now we're at day 6. And then you have to make the decision, like, everybody has jobs and the kids have school. What do we do? How does this play out? At this point, I'm in contact. There's certain people that have kind of like, quickly people start falling into like, okay, this person's the one doing the emails. This one's doing the phone calls. This one's, unfortunately, this one's receiving the ransom calls. So you just got to make a decision. You got to call your employer. We did that. And I think everybody at that point was assured their positions, don't worry about it, take care of it. Never in a million years do you think this is going to drag out a month, 2 months, 3 months. At some point, it didn't matter how, you just got to get some kind of normalcy. We couldn't, because we're dealing with it directly. So at the same time, it's like, what does that really matter? I have to take care of this. It's my mother. It's her life. You just drop everything. You drop out of social media. You drop out of, your phone. You don't want to hear your phone ring, first of all. You don't want to be in communication with anyone, because then it's true. The reality sets in. What if the person on the other line who's saying, I'm going to help you, is somehow involved? And it's a really harsh reality. I think that when they put it to us, that was, I believe they said, like, I don't remember exact percentage, but it was like a super high percentage of kidnappings that do occur are done within a circle, or it's somebody who says, well, I know this person, or I know so-and-so's aunt or uncle, or blah, 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 especially when it's coming from like an organized group, not the cartels.
Right.
That's another thing too. We had to think, like, is this cartel involved? When you think kidnappings, or at least I did, I immediately thought, oh my God, well, what are we talking about here? I didn't know, or I didn't realize that you had groups, like how you said, they're just, a lot of the times they're just hoodlums or little small groups who are trying to make a name for them. So they're trying to terrorize their little town or get quick money, and that's why they're doing it. So we had to sit down and think, did she owe money to anyone? Was this something that, is it someone that we do know? Is this cartel related or not? But then you kind of, there's also rules to these, groups and how cartels run. And it was immediately like, you know what? Cartels, they
don't need this kind of money. They don't need this kind of headache, so to speak. Yeah, this is a headache for somebody that big. They don't need that. I mean, you open the news and they have submarines being caught in the water.
Exactly.
So, we're talking $1 billion investments, and meanwhile they're kidnapping somebody for $5,000. It's not the cartel. That's immediately what I'm thinking. And so that's when I put it at, children, children in the sense, not age, but children in the, in the colloquial sense of somebody who's not that
Immature.
level of organized crime. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so how do you deal with that? It's kind of impossible, because when you're dealing with organized crime, sometimes there is, like you said, some rules, some regulation, some system that works through it. And you can go somewhere and say, hi, I'm here regarding this matter, and somehow try to resolve it. But when you're dealing with immature people and people who are not organized, and like you said, looking for a quick dollar, it's scarier almost for me when I think about it, because you really don't know how they'll react. They're psychotic.
Yeah.
And
or who
you're
to
right.
go to.
Yeah, who to go to, exactly, because there's no, there's no hierarchy. There's no embassy, so to speak, in California for you to go to that embassy and say, hi, I'm here for this matter, right? And on top of it, there's a lot of fear involved, because, again, I'd say this often to people: the cartel are not looking to cause mayhem. They're looking to make their money. However they make their money, they're looking to make their money. And the violence that happens is involved with the money they're making. It's not involved in, terrorizing people around the country or countries.
Right.
But in this case, you worry, because you think, hey, who do we know? Which one of our friends kind of thinks that we have $1 million for these people to call us with such a ransom or whatever large amount it is? And, who could it be? Because you start worrying, you start speculating, you start becoming suspicious of your own friends and surroundings, and maybe even somebody in HR at your work who sees your payroll and is like, oh, she gets this much, she's got a big family. If all of them are making this much, add it all up, they can easily pay $500,000. So, everything goes through your head, and you start seeing everybody as part of this gang that kidnapped your mom, right?
Yeah,
and
everything.
So, yeah,
it's scary.
So then you quit your job. Well, you take the leave from your job. They tell you it's okay, take your time, deal with this. But they're thinking a week, 10 days or something like that. That they're like, fine, it's okay.
Yeah, I unfortunately it wasn't that clear for me, and I think for my other brothers and sisters as well. They kind of, had to jump back in there. But the roles are different. When you're talking about, when you're dealing directly with the authorities and you're dealing with someone who has the life of your mother in their hands, the circle even has to shrink. Even within us here, it's like, you don't need to know all of these details, because in a panic or in the moments, that you're just like, what's going on? I want to tell someone what's happening. We had to literally cut, even within our brothers and sisters, everyone out. And it was just the people that needed to know, or who had some type of direct contact with what was happening on the other side, that were involved. And that's how it happened. So everybody was able to push through on social. We couldn't do anything because it was not made public,
Right.
Mexico
right. So you still couldn't go out there and tell people this is happening, help.
No,
right.
Not at all. And so at the point where we reached, actively ransom calls, and for weeks now, we're talking about, I believe it was 2 weeks in, and 30 plus calls. And then it sets in, okay, what is the U.S. going to do to make sure she is found? Because at this point, it doesn't make sense that they haven't been found, that the phones haven't been tracked, that they haven't pinpointed there's something going on here. So I became very suspicious after a certain amount of days that we have some type of collusion here. There's something going on the other end that we're not being told. And sure enough, we found out there was leaks with some of the information and phone calls that were being literally passed around over there. And it's like, why? Why? Why is there a leak in such a huge case? Or it was really difficult for us to understand too. Now we know. We didn't understand, like, not every agency in Mexico will take kidnappings. It's very common for them to have kidnappings, people who disappear. We, on this side, we were impacted by work. Our lives are at a standstill. You're walking around like a zombie. You're not sleeping. You're not eating. You're in complete terror. Like, I'm talking 24/7. You hear your phone ring, and it is horrifying, because you just don't know what the next phone call is going to be. What is the next set of instructions going to be? Are we going to be able to meet their demands? And the biggest demand was the money. And like how you said, it's not an amount that's attainable whatsoever. So working here with then it comes into play. Then you really realize how both governments work so different.
Mm-hmm.
So different. Mexico doesn't want to say anything because that's just how they do it. If unfortunately 90-something% of your own government or the authorities there are corrupt, they're involved in some type of way. When you find out, they're being paid off to look the other way, these people are being helped.
Mm-hmm.
They're being helped, but why? You have a U.S. citizen, now you have the government involved, the FBI involved, but they can't just barge into, Mexico and go find her themselves.
Right. Yeah. Right.
They have to wait for some, and it's so frustrating because you're
and on top of that, yeah, I understand that, but also, a lot of people watching or listening to this, myself included, being, here in this conversation, I go back into my mind to all these movies you see about these kidnappers, and the FBI comes in and they bring the money, and then they go to meet the ransom person, and then they catch them in the act and things like that. None of this really happens in real life. I guess we think those things. We think, oh, the FBI showed up, so now they're going to do something, but it's not really like that. There's no team that goes down there and kind of extracts your mom and arrests these people and come back.
It's not that easy. In our minds, that's exactly how we thought it would play out. But then it was
everybody would.
We are very lucky here in the United States when it comes to, when something like this occurs here, you have a negotiator who picks up the phone and speaks to the bad guy because they know what to listen to, what are the patterns in their voice, what are they saying, how are they saying it. Mexico is like, you're on your own, buddy. You talk to them. Yeah. You got the money, cool, pay it, and then once we find out where they're at, then we'll go and we'll get them. But that's not how it works here. So you're talking about we're trying to be coached in a sense to be professionals when you are the children of the person whose life is in these people's hands, and you have to keep it together, and you have to let them know, like, I'm doing everything that we possibly can. We are, because we are. But how do you maintain that composure, and you just don't. You're honestly falling apart. Anything that, say the wrong thing and it can go bad, So you're put in a very difficult position because you're thinking, well, how is the U.S. handling it like this? But Mexico's saying, don't do that. Don't say this. You talk to them. You guys want to come down? Well, by all means, and FBI is like, absolutely not. You're not crossing that border, You're in immediate danger. You are you are also a direct victim. How do you handle that? So, and a million and one things are, in spurts run through your mind, like, oh my God, my job, but then at the end of the day, it's like, who cares? It's my mother. We still haven't found her. And then you reach a breaking point. You really do reach a point where it's like, when are you stepping in? Or when are we making this public so that we can get the help of everyone? Someone must have seen something, someone probably knows who took her, who has her, where they have her. Our first logical, reaching out was to the governor in Colima, and our pleas went completely ignored. They went completely ignored. And then you dig a little bit and then you find out why. They take bribes, They are paid off. They are paid to look the other way, Certain things run exactly how they want them to. It's designed that way. What is very unexpected in something like this is that you have a family that doesn't give up, because that's typically what happens. They might shut down a street or create mayhem for like a day or two, and then they get scared, or they're told to not say anything, not look anymore, not do anything. But at this point, it's like, hold on. That can't be it. This cannot be our reality. She's a U.S. citizen. We have the support of the United States. Here, we are U.S. citizens. So is she. I mean, you're bringing back people, who are wrongfully or detained in other countries, and the government steps in and does whatever possible to make that happen. What's the difference here? you're dealing with Mexico. It's extremely difficult. They look at one of the like hardest things for me also was whenever we're asked, where are you from? We always say Mexican. We always say we're from Colima, where, because that's where our parents are from. I think one of the, bigger things to really understand is that we're really looked down upon. Like, they don't want the FBI to help in any way. They don't think that it's useful. You have a back and forth of egos, of agencies saying, and it is such a frustrating position to be in, to literally see that there are solutions or that the next move should be this, but they're saying, well, who suggested that, or who said that? Well, the FBI. Well, no, we don't want to do it that way. We're going to do it this way. And what can you do? Force them? You can't. So what do? For us, we had to really sit down and think, okay, if we are going to plead to the government here, we also have to make that plea in Mexico, because she is there and she is Mexican and she has a dual citizenship. So she is a citizen of both. We have to receive this help, and then we have to do things the right way. So we start contacting, pleading for help from everywhere. And we, unfortunately, on that, the news went, as soon as it went public, when they finally made the decision to go public, I believe it was day 35 or 36. You're talking about a month and a week of absolute horror. And it's, when it went public, you would think that the authorities, in Mexico would have been like, okay, well, now we're going to get the help of the public. And it wasn't like that. They were upset. They didn't like that it happened that way. Why? We knocked on every door. We tried to get help from every government official from surrounding states in Colima, within different cities inside the state, from the governor herself. Completely went, like, they just, like, well, she's just one of so many. What else?
Right.
And it's horrible. You just feel like you
become a statistic. Really, you become a statistic. You don't become human anymore in their eyes. And unfortunately for you, it's your mom. It's not a statistic. Yeah. So now what have you done? I mean, obviously the authorities, you started learning that on the Mexican side, they don't want to deal with it. On the American side, it's just talk, so to speak. It's just them
in a sense,
in a sense, it's talk. So, and they do that well. I mean, I've lived in Canada, over half of my life. And I know a lot of the policing is talk. It's not action. So that being the case, I feel comfortable saying that, in your case, because I know what you're going through. I had a distant family friend who, same thing, they had somebody in their family kidnapped, in front of everybody else, and nothing happened. And then it just went cold. So I've seen this before. I've seen a lot of talk and no action. And so I think people at that point come to a realization, like you have over the months, that I need to do something myself. This isn't working. The police situation is not, I cannot delegate this to the police. It's not working. So let's get into that. What have you done since then? I mean, what's your plan? What are you doing?
The communication between both sides is still active. They are investigating how much or what they're doing. A lot of it is not being said because it's an active investigation. Two, they might not be doing anything. It might just be the same, they're regurgitating the exact same thing when being asked, well, we are following the leads, we're following this, and, we can't disclose much or whatever.
Right.
But at some point, you start really feeling like, okay, how do we bring attention to this where it matters, where it happened? So we reached out to the governor. That didn't help. We reached out to the Fiscalia, which is, the state level authorities. That hasn't done much. There's a lot of dead ends that we keep hitting, but why? So you start piecing things together, and like how you said, at some point you just start thinking, like, I have to make sure that the awareness is beyond what they're used to, because change is not going to happen, or action is not going to happen if we just sit here and wait on them to do things how they want to, or how they're used to doing it there. Once it went public, at that point, it's like, it's all out. The news went viral. It went within 24 hours, we were covered. It went worldwide. Sadly, it went worldwide, and you're just getting bombarded. I'm talking, we were getting from, I believe there was South Korea covered it. We had South Africa. We had people in UK reach out for interview. It went everywhere. And it was just, so now we're just like pleading for the public here and around the world. And then we find out that in Mexico, we were still making connections in the state, in Colima, and they're like, we haven't heard it on the radio yet. We're hearing it because of you, or we're hearing it because we follow you on social media. And I'm like, how is it possible that this goes worldwide? This went viral worldwide, but not where it happened. So then it really puts things into perspective. They're not helping you for a reason. And then you really uncover.
And you're talking about the media now. You're not even talking about police anymore. You're talking about the media. Exactly. I mean, the local channel down the street from your mom's house is unwilling 100%. To cover what happened up street.
Yep. Yeah, we were receiving phone calls. They wanted to know. But when it came down to actually covering it, they're like, I had one that was actually nice enough to say, look, we're not going to cover it. And I'm like, why not? We're owned by so-and-so's father, which is, a government official. And we can't. What do you mean you can't? You're a news station, and then you start hitting, you want the Latin market, you want that media, and then you start realizing, wow, everybody really is intertwined. You have the authorities with the government, and then your media, it's all connected. It is all connected. And you just say, fine, that door closed, I'm still going to go over here. You won't cover it.
You're going to push, but push come to shove, you're starting to realize that really what they're trying to say is, look, honey, if you have the money, give it to them, get your mom back. If you don't, just go on with your life like your mom didn't exist. And that's what they want you to kind of follow.
100%. 100%. And I said, absolutely not. And I said, fine.
Right.
I mean, we're falling apart. We're still trying to figure out. We're still trying, there's still a lot of stuff going on, actively with the authorities. But then at the same time, it's like, we have to do whatever we can, humanly possible, what we can to create awareness there, and right. So here comes into play, now you're talking about another month goes by and we're relentless on social media. We're relentless with, the interviews and reaching out, and it helped. We were able to raise, enough funds to start some type of searches. A lot of this stuff people do have, they're not doing it on their own,
Right.
And then for them to do it, regardless, it's such a process. Everything, don't think that, okay, so we have a lead that we can go and look here. It's not like, okay, we're going to go today, we're going to go tomorrow. It's, well, we have to plan. We have to ask. We have to ask for permission. It is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah,
we win. Horrible. I mean, it is, you're knocking on every door and you just feel like everyone's just closing the door on you, and you're just like, this is my mother we're looking for. And then the reality sets in of, this is such a bigger issue. It's not only about my mom, but this is about anybody who travels, not only to Mexico. And it started hitting me really heavy. I'm like, why am I in this position? Why is this going on? I'm like, maybe this is going to open a door for us to make sure that people, it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you're traveling to Mexico or not. If you are crossing the border anywhere in the world and something happens to you, you need to be absolutely aware of the nightmare that you're going to face. Those countries don't run the way the U.S. does.
Right.
And even then, when you have the U.S. government behind you to a certain extent, they're still limited. Or are they? Or are they? Because if this was XYZ's kid or mother,
yes, of course,
she would have been back.
Of course. I mean, it's sad you just said that, because not too long ago in the news, the U.S. traded certain, detainees for releasing about $6 billion of another country's funds that were frozen because of certain sanctions and whatnot. So, you're calculating a person at $1 billion value that you're returning to a country that you are fighting, essentially. And then you think about that, and then you think about how much is Zoe's mom actually worth? Because you put $1 on that as a government. How much is she worth? Is she worth $10, $20? What is her worth? Because it seems like the value is not there. Because if the value was there, if this was, Bill Gates's daughter, I'm sure there would be planes flying into Mexico. So
It would have been.
yeah,
It would have been.
that would, it would have been. Either they would have lost her in a crossfire or some disaster, or they would have saved her. That would have been one of the two solutions. But there would have been closure either way within that first 30 days. This dragging on, it's kind of like, let's just drag this on, because they seem to go along with it. They're not going psycho. Her family are just like sitting there in, California, and they're kind of calling us. And at worst, they just yell once in a while, because most people are civil, and they'll just maybe at the end get frustrated and yell at the FBI officer. And the FBI officer is like, yeah, that's just part of the job. That's part of my paycheck, to get yelled at.
She's frustrated. Exactly.
Yeah, she's frustrated, whatever. I'll take it. I'll take it. And then, 9 months later, you call less. And then maybe 2 years later, you stop calling. And then 3 years later, you have a funeral without knowing what's happened. And then you go on with your life, right? You never even call the FBI anymore. And, one day, if they find her, if they do whatever, that's the solution. And that's how they treat the average folk. Because we live in a society where we're valued by the net worths that we have, not by the lives that we breathe. So in that form of evaluation of a human, all we can do is bond together and try to do something about it. And this is why I took this call. It was really because I said, if we can help Zoe, just like anybody else that we know, it's just because we have mutual friend that this landed here with us, and everybody in the organization said, yeah, but we're helping. We're going to put this up as a cause, and we're going to help, and we're going to support, and we're going to try and do what we can. Obviously, we don't have eyes in Mexico to help you with like, oh, we just saw your mom cross the street today, which generally I don't think is the case. She will not be going to the grocery store. So I'm really not that, I'm not thinking in that manner, but I'm thinking with a lot of awareness, with a lot of, something out there. And now I want to ask you this, with helping you, most of the help that anybody can do at this point is going to be financial, because realistically, there are no authorities beyond or greater than the FBI or the Mexican authorities to be involved. So, even if I was the president of a country, I can't really come and say, I'm going to give you more forces, because, what more than the FBI, right? So that's one.
Exactly.
The second thing is there are no eyes in Colima. The town population is, like you said, 300 people in Puerto Nuevo, right? And essentially, Pueblo Nuevo, yeah. And essentially, with 300 people, I'm sure you've spoken to all of them. I'm sure all of them have seen nothing. And the one person who did see saw limited glimpse, and that was the end of it. So that all being the case, the only thing that can be done now is possibly, raising some kind of funding to support you guys
to our own searches.
Doing things. Yeah, your own searches, or I don't know. I don't even know, because you can't really negotiate with. Are the ransoms still going? It's been quite a long time now. What's happening? What's going on there? Are they still calling? Are they still saying, "Hey, what happened?"
So we, after multiple attempts of phone calls and negotiating, and there was a ransom. Then it just went, I believe it was a week or two. I'm not exact on what day, but the calls just went silent. It went from like one after another, and then a few days later another, and then another, and then another. You have all these phone calls going, and then they just go silent. And then after that, it's another kidnapping and another kidnapping, and then another, and then you start putting everything together, and then things start unfolding, it is the same group. So more things start uncovering. I mean, there's so much going on with the funding. We do have to, it's very important that we haven't been able to receive any type of help from, as a victim, standpoint from either side, because the U.S. won't help because it happened on Mexican ground. The Mexican, government can't help us because I'm not a dual citizen. I'm an American. So everyone within the government that has some type of power has the power to turn around to their government and say, what is going on? This is the type of help that we can provide for you. One of the biggest reasons is there is power in numbers. If we sit back and cross our arms, then we just give in to how the system has always worked for them. But is that who we are here in the United States? When people get together and march, there are changes. Change does happen. And I've always said, if I stay quiet, then I do her no service. Then I'm not continuing the search for her, and I'm not doing what I can within my reach. Because if the government is only saying, like how you said, if the FBI is going to kick back and say, yeah, Zoe, we know, you know what, yes, there's a search going on, but they haven't asked for our help directly, well, then who will? If you're not, we all have someone. There is a hierarchy here. Sure, you're the FBI. Someone's in charge of you. And then someone's in charge of that person. And then it goes all the way up to our president.
And it's essentially how to
if
push
you're
for that.
Change,
that becomes the essence.
So here comes the funding. A lot of people don't print.
How to make this a priority.
It's a harsh reality. That we have to print flyers and we have to post them here. Well, why here if it happened in Mexico? Do you know how many people have families in Mexico? You know how many other people, it made me realize how many others live like how we do, where our parents come and go, they stay here a few months and they go back, they come to the doctor, they come to see the family. And it was a huge eye-opener for me.
Yes.
Because now I almost feel like, yes, I'm fighting for my mom. Yes, we're doing everything that we can for her. I'm sorry. It just hurts me also because it makes me it's a harsh reality that either other families have gone through it or can be the next victims, and they're not going to know what to do. And we run into every possible dead end that we have, but I'm not giving up. No. Right.
No, there's no such thing. You know what? You only lose when you give up. You only lose when you give up, because I say this often to people, and I say, die doing what you're doing, and even if you don't get to the trophy of whatever that trophy is for you, you're still on your way. So you haven't lost, because you die and you just everything goes black. Everything goes dark. You don't know what happened, right? But until that last breath, you were on your way to the trophy. That's all you remember of your life, which is beautiful. But to sit there for the last 30 years of your life and say, I could have, I should have, but I didn't. Exactly. And then the ifs come on, and then it becomes a disaster of a life. So never give up no matter what happens. But strategy, because when you're talking, I start thinking to myself, I was in La Jolla for a while, and San Diego, and I had friends who were Mexican, and we used to go back and forth to Tijuana all the time, for the food, for the culture, for everything. And I have friends who literally their parents live there and they live here, and they used to, back then, this is about 20 something years ago. So back then, what we used to do is we used to buy, Nikes and stuff like that, and go over there and sell it to the locals there, because they couldn't get it, right? And so we used to make our taco money from that and just enjoy the weekend and come back. So that was then. And now I'm starting to think, oh my God, every single one of those people can be a target by these, mini criminal groups. Yeah, because if all it takes is one story to happen, all it takes is, for Carlos over here to drive a Mercedes, and people point at him and say, how he got that? He kidnapped this woman and they paid him $500,000. Every child in Mexico is going to be like, and then, I can do that. And then it just, explodes from there. And probably that did happen. And so here we are today with you. Now, what is your strategy? Because what I'm here to do essentially is, the awareness part, yes, but I'm not a big fan of awareness because I think awareness is only good to a certain extent. We're aware of your situation. The people who need to be aware of your situation are. What we need to do is follow with your strategy to a point where we can elevate the awareness and the situation to make this an active situation, not in the sense of a file that says active on it, but in the sense of this file moving places, right? That's what I want to do. I want to move this file places. So how do we help you? What do we do?
Yeah, we have a GoFundMe, and initially
Okay.
is
What are you
for
talking
there's
about
still
when
a
you talk
reward.
about funding?
The FBI did put out a reward for 20. It's at
Right.
It started at 20, and they increased it to 25,000. There's still money that we can raise on our own, so that we can add onto the reward as well. Reaching out to, as far as like printing flyers here, it's almost $1 each color print. You print 1,000 flyers, there's $1,000. I mean, and it goes like this. Reaching out, we do have certain groups that we're trying to reach out to that they do a lot of searches on their own. This is not through the authority side. This is, again, bringing awareness, but actually following without us giving too much information on what the investigation is going. This is not something that's gone cold where there is no leads. That's not where we're at. So in order for us to keep moving, being able to have essentially eyes and ears and feet on boots on the ground over there, these people need to eat, they need to move in cars, they need gas, they need so basically we're forming our own little groups, but we need to fund on our own. We need to fund these.
Police. Yeah, basically you're funding your own mini police to find what's happened and where your mom is. Okay.
I have my own family, I have my own bills, none of that stopped. The truth, the hard reality is you feel like your life is taken and they kind of like you're just put down, you're not moving. It doesn't. Everything else keeps moving, and then you're just stuck.
Right. Yeah, and we don't have the support systems in society anywhere in the world today to say Zoe's going through hell. Here's a $50,000 in your account. Don't worry about the money. Go deal with your hell and come back, and then we'll figure it out. If you can pay, you can pay it. If you can't, we'll sort it out, or the public will help. So that's essentially why we're here. I understand that, and I know that it's a fact. Like you said, nothing stops. Your internet won't stop. Your water bill, nothing stops. So that being the case, the only way for people in a deteriorating world today to be able to make ends meet is to support each other. That's the only way right now, until some huge event or some catalyst makes that change for the way we're living today and the way we're just being opportunistic on the backs of each other. But at this point, all we can do is compassion. And that's what Compassiviste is about, right? It's about, compassionate activism. And I think the activism here is not just supporting Zoey find her mom, but it's also trying to raise this issue into a global issue in the sense that a lot of people don't know. When I heard of your story and I started reading a little bit, there's some media out there, there's some posts out there, but I started reading a little bit, and then the rabbit hole sends me to the statistics, and it's like 3,000 people a day get kidnapped in the US. And I stopped, and I started calling a few people I know, journalists, and said, hey, can you verify this? Because I don't want to go on air anywhere and say something, because this is ridiculous. If somebody said this to me, I say it's misinformed. Like, this is impossible. United States of America, 3,000 people daily. You're talking 1 million people a year. 1 million people a year out of an approximate 400 million people population. How? Where are these people? Like, why is it that when I turn on CNN, I can hear about Taylor Swift's concert, but I can't hear about 3,000 people who went missing? I mean, the feed should be just one after the other of people kidnapped, but there's not one. There's not one. There should be a website that just, is just a ticker that keeps going with kidnapped people, but there isn't. And so what is really happening, right? That, like, I went crazy. And so I said, hey, I need to do this for you, but you as bigger than you, because you're not just doing this for you anymore. I mean, this is really, you've opened my eyes to the fact that, and then I read, stats about Mexico, and it's reported 2,000 people a year, right? I know it's more than that, but at the same time, I also say never put the cartel's business in the national numbers, because that's its own country, right? So the 50,000 that may be kidnapped or killed there, that's their own business. You go into that world, you're stepping into a different world. Do not involve them. They have their own country. But in the country of Mexico, the good people of Mexico, 2,000 people, okay, I can understand that. Why? Because somehow the people are lovely. I've been to Mexico many times, and not as a Canadian tourist in Mayan Riviera. No, I've been to little towns. I have friends there. I've been to Tijuana, where people were scared to go. I've been to those places people don't go. And I partied with Mexicans, and some of the kindest poor people who are kind, that really melts my heart. I mean, I went to somebody's house and they only had enough food for two, but the three of us ate, and they didn't care. That's Mexican culture to me. It's not what you see on TV. It's not the vato with the all of the gang and stuff like that in South LA. It's none of that. It's a different culture. So you don't want to put this down to that, because a lot of people are like, oh, but it's Mexicans. Nobody knows what happens. Right. Maybe Zoe, she was money laundering for the cartel and then she didn't pay them. Yeah, you don't know what happened. All of this goes through people's mind. And I'm sorry to say this, but I'll say it. If you were white, blonde, and your name was Cassie or Chloe or something and whatever, different story. But you're Mexican at the end of the day. Your mom's Mexican. So you know what? You live in that, South California area. You must have been involved. Something must have happened. Your brother, somebody in the family, something must have happened. And I'm sure the authorities may have, kind of filtered in there as well, kind of, looked into that as well. And like, tell us the truth. What did you do,
100%. And we did. And that is another thing that I think it's important for, it really hit home, and you really got me right now. Because you're talking about how the culture is and visiting, and it's not all bad, but that's never been the case what we think. I mean, we would literally give up our parents back to Mexico. They were born there. They came here. They made their life here. They did everything to raise us and to retire in a very quiet life. Like how you said, living here is a luxury. If you live in California, it basically feels like now it's a luxury to live here, right? So for us to, it took a lot emotionally for us to essentially let them go back, but we all said, like, you know what? It's a small town. They'll be fine. It's home. There's good people. It breaks my heart. And I think that, like this has become something bigger.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the same land, the same people and the state and everything that we love about Mexico is essentially at this moment robbing me of, and my brothers and sisters, of our mother. It's our mother, It is.
I know. And unfortunately, it's a small percentage, that's what I want people to know. Like, everybody in Mexico is all love, all heart, all goodness. I mean, you're talking about people who are spiritual, who are honest, who, you've got, wow, like millennia of history. Yeah, that's what Mexico is. I'm telling you, I know Mexico. I'm not a tourist who goes to, 5-star all inclusive in Maya or Cabo, and that's. I've been to Mexico coast to coast, and I've been lost where people have actually said, "Bro, you're in the wrong place. Like, you can't be lost here." Like, and they put me in their car and they drove me to where I need to go, and I'm sitting in the car thinking, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die here," right? And they put me and they take me to the station, and they tell and then they tell them, hey, this guy's lost, he doesn't know, but he needs to go here, so give him this ticket. Like, the guy's telling the other guy, in Spanish and everything, and ciao, and let's trade numbers. I still talk to some of these people, they trade WhatsApp numbers with me, and I'm still in touch with them. And these, I know what Mexico is, and I feel, and I always, Mexico's not my country. I have no relation to Mexico. I have no Mexican blood in me, but I hate when people sit in front of me and pretend like, oh, you're dealing with the country is not the cartel, and I even tell people, I even defend the cartel, not in what they do, but in the culture, because they're honest. They tell you, you come into this game, this is how it works. You screw up, there's rules. You screw up, this is what happens. I respect that. What I don't respect is a government who comes and says, I protect you, and then they don't protect you. That's the hypocrisy. It's not the cartel. Leave the cartel out of this. Don't use the cartel's image to sell your own hypocrisy. You're the dirty guy.
Exactly. You have people reaching out, and I've seen it multiple times. And when I say multiple, I mean at least 2 to 3 times, where there has been families in our situation who have pleaded on, on television. They put themselves out asking for the help of the cartels to help them find their loved ones. Everything has run through it. I mean, we are literally, you're pinned against something, because I'm like, my love for Mexico doesn't change. What I'm heartbroken about, and I think that that's why it really got me, is to know that the Mexican government isn't reflecting that love and that passion or that unity of the real of us, like of the raza. That's what I said. I'm like,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
I'm like, this. We had people say like, oh, well, now you want the help of them. I want the help of, just the same way you would look at your neighbor or think about her as your own. I've had people say, your mom is my mom now, and they're reaching out, to sending out emails, making those phone calls for us. If we can get everyone, exactly what you said, to have that compassion and think, all it takes is one phone call for me to put in my little, my grain of salt, sand there. She's like, and if everybody did a little bit, if everyone could please gather with us and understand that this is, right now you're doing it for me, but God forbid if you're someone who travels and it happens to you, wouldn't you want the same? The awareness that we need, it only goes so far. We need to put, we were faced with bringing down billboards. That was another, it was very odd, but a very, it took me so long to find someone to agree to put up billboards in Mexico for me, because they said, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I need to have this FBI like flyer in a billboard so that people can see. And they're like, you're crazy. Like, we don't do that here. And I'm like, what do you mean? We have Amber Alerts through all our freeways. We have billboards, and here is very different. They're like, no, we use these billboards for politicians. And I'm like, what? They're like, politicians or restaurants. And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, and I just had one after another. No, like, we can't, we won't. And so getting them printed and posted flyers, we're talking about, it all comes back to all of this. We've already exhausted everything, but I also, because the funding is limited, we had to bring them down. There's only so much you can do monthly, and this has gone on for 11 months, start next in just a few weeks, it will be exactly a year from this. So the cause is something bigger. And I think that if we just leave it in the hands of the authorities, we're screwed. We are completely.
Yeah, it's just not, I'm not an advocate of that. And Zoe, honestly, where I'd like to step in is to take your cause as bigger than Zoe and her mom, but as Zoe breaking this pattern or this cycle, something coming out of this so that we can take the next steps together from here. So I think if we raise this issue as a Compassiviste issue with our community and bring all the Compassivistes out here and say, look, guys, we need to chip in. Here's a budget. We need to chip in. This budget will move us from A to B to C. No matter what happens over the next few months, we're going to commit to this and we're going to really push with Zoe. Then whatever happens, at least you're in a position to say, you know what? There are more important things for me to do with my life than go back to wherever I was doing at my job. It doesn't matter what, you could be a surgeon. I don't care. But at the end of the day, as a surgeon, you're saving one life at a time on your operating table. But when you can save a nation from deteriorating in this way and the culture to lose its honor to the name of, these little gangs, kidnapping and things like that, you're reviving your country. You're reviving what Mexico means. Right now, people are scared. I have friends of mine, and I remember I was at a resort, and there was somebody at the resort who was in one of the most expensive, the the general manager of one of the most expensive hotels in Mexico City.
Yeah.
And I was joking with them and I was saying, hey, if I come there, can you guarantee that I come and leave safe? And, I was joking, though. I didn't mean it seriously because, like I told you, I know Mexico. And, she turned around and she said to me, I will personally put a car for you to make sure that you're safe. And I said, that's a wrong answer. And she said, why? And I said, you're telling me that it's unsafe and you're telling me that you're going to put some bulletproof car or something to protect me from who? The cartel's not coming from me. They don't care about me. They have a $2 billion business to manage monthly. They don't care about me. So the little kid that's coming after me, you're telling me that all of Mexico or all of Mexico City is like that. They're standing outside, your hotel around the square to see who comes out in the old square and kidnap them. So and that's not Mexico. I know Mexico. So lady, you're telling the wrong story about your own country, and we got into this argument with her. Right. And so she then realized, she's like, wow, you're speaking, but I'm just so used to this because people come from all over the world and these are high net worth people. And we do have these cars. We do have these, cars with the bodyguard and driver and blah, blah, blah. And we are connected to the police right away. If one of our high net worth guests, something happens. So she's fallen into that. But I think we need to take a step back here. I think if we get people together and if we say, let's raise some funds, let Zoey lead the way, let's just support her and trust in her having gone through this for all this time and see where we get to with this. And then, wherever it happens, I mean, when you do find your mom and you do get your mom and she becomes an advocate with you on this, then that becomes a life of what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. And really, sometimes that's how, you want to call it God, universe, whatever word you want to use. I don't care. Some people are religious, some people are atheists, but at the end of the day, that's what the force decides for you. You're in this situation not because you chose it. You could have gone to school for something else, but you're in this situation because the universe chose you to be in this situation. And the universe never chooses anyone to do something that they're incapable of or that they break in. It's your will to do it or to break. And you're not going to break because you're going to do it the whole way through. I know, I see it in you. You're going to fight. You're going to do this all the way through. So we're going to support you. And we're gonna, we're gonna come up with numbers. We're gonna come up with a strategy, and we're gonna put this out there, and we're gonna support. And don't say thank you. It's duty. It's not a gift. It's not a privilege. No, it's duty. I'm a human. You're a human. So it's my duty. It's my obligation to help you. So don't ever say thank you. To me, that's disrespectful because you're distancing me from you when you say thank you. But if I'm your brother, as a human, then it's my obligation to know that somebody is in this situation and I have to be there. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that together. We're going to do everything that we can and we're going to support. And we're doing this for everybody else who's going through your situation. And everybody of those 3,000 people a day that are going through this just in the United States. I'm not talking about my audience in Europe or anywhere else. I'm just talking about the United States. There is a million people over the last 10 years. That's, 10 million. Like, what number are you talking about? That's like the whole of LA being kidnapped. Like, where are these people? What happened? Who is in charge? Like, forget the space program. Bring that budget and do something for these kids who are. I mean, never mind the 3,000, 2,300 of them were kids. I read. Like when. Come on, you don't need to worry about certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it take? What does it take for you to do so? I mean, does the number have to hit 10,000 a day for you to say we have a problem? Is there, I don't get it.
And it doesn't, because I think the bigger point is, and because I've heard it, it's like, yeah, but it's just one out of this many. But it's like, if you start with the change of this one, then all of this trickles down. I'm like, exactly. I'm like, when you're at a march or when you're...
Yeah, the ripple, right.
Yeah.
And it becomes difficult for the criminal because criminals look for the easy way, okay? There is a reason why a criminal is hitting one house and not the other. There's a reason why a criminal hits one bank and not the other. The reason is facility. I mean, you want the ease of access, the ease of the lowest
Mm-hmm.
risk capacity. Right now, the lowest risk capacity is, hey, let's kidnap the mom of the girl who's in LA. She seems to be living good, whatever. Her social media looks, wow, she must have a lot of money. So let's hit there. They do that. And then if it works, and they go on. But now, if one person does this and they get hung because of it, they get caught and they do 30 years or something like that, everybody else starts rethinking the situation. Like kidnappings, no, we're out of that game, because you know what? They're really all over that now. Like that's become the big deal for the government. So we're out of that game. Now we're going into, for example, watering down booze and selling it off as whatever. Now that's the new game. Why? Because nobody cares.
Yeah, and like how you said, if they see that there's consequences to these things. So in between all of this, I did mention that there was other kidnappings. There has been 2 arrests made.
Yeah.
So a lot of the funding and a lot of the backing and action that we're going to have to take moving forward is going to be legal. The legal help that so far nobody has stepped up and said, we'll do it pro bono. Of course not, right? And then especially you're talking about crossing borders, or do we get someone there? How do we know that the person over there that we can actually trust? We can't. So we have to do it from here, which means money, so there are 2 people who have been arrested in connection with this. Why hasn't it been brought up? Because they're being protected for some odd reason. There are articles there. The news is there. If anybody goes into our either GoFundMe or to the petition website, there is some information there where you can see. And it's, if we can unite, if we can get these, like how you said, if we can get not only the awareness, the news is out there, but if we can keep getting people to say, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to click on the link today and I'm going to share the flyer because I'm in a nearby, state. Someone sees it and says, you know what? I know exactly where she's at. Or I know these people. I know these 2 guys that are arrested. I know where they had her. That's still another lead that leads us closer to her. And not only her, she's not, they're not exactly. It's like these people are not,
Well, I know
they're
the
not
crew
operating
of these 2
on their
guys,
own.
or the guys they grew
know.
up with, or something.
Just like she's my mother. These folks have family,
Right.
Someone out there that has the same thinking as us or better, that says, you know what, I just seen the quote, the time is always right to do the right thing. Or something like that. It's like, you can, and we can, and that's as hopeless as I feel sometimes, and as brokenhearted as I am, and everything is just like, there's turmoil inside. I still have to maintain some type of clarity to just say, what am I going to do today to fight? There are days where I have a list of things and people that I say, I'm going to reach out to this one. And then at the end of the day, before I know it, I'm like, I didn't reach out to no one because I'm mentally I'm drained. I am. Absolutely. I am 100% drained. And then I think about what would she do for us?
Drained.
And it's exactly that. There's no way that she would give up on us. And there's no way that I'm giving up on her.
No. The only way is the relentless pursuit. Yeah, I would never tell you to fold. And you know what? The sad part of the world is you may talk to a therapist today who says, "Oh, but you have to live your life, and you have to have closure, and you have to blah blah blah," and these stories, and just walk away. And you're like, "What? No. I walk away. She walks away. He walks away. Who's standing for what then? We just walk away from everything. Like." That's what got us into this situation in the first place.
Exactly. I'm too much of a fighter, I think, inside that but I really need the help. I really need the help from the audience. Anyone who hears this in any way, shape, or form that they feel that they can help, please do so. I've had people say, I don't know how to reach out, or I don't know what to say. Don't need to tell me anything. Just please do your part. Send that email. Make a dollar donation, share the link, talk to your friends if they travel. Hey, be aware of this, and if something were to happen, this is where you should call first. Even if that's all that people get, like, oh shoot, you know what, I travel often, maybe I should be more, you should always let someone know. There's so many things that we can do. I just need, at this point, it's like you're doing everything. You feel like you've been doing everything completely by yourself, and it's like, I don't need more people. I need the right people.
You need a team.
And I feel like the more this gets shared,
need a team. That's what you need.
I always said that. I'm like, Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I can't fight. I can't continue to fight this by myself. If I have more people that understand that the system is broken, but you can push to it, and that there is power in numbers. That's always something that runs through. I'm like, when I join a cause and I've gone to downtown and I make my posters and I'm, these are perfect strangers that I'm advocating for, that I'm standing up for, that I'm sending out. I almost feel like when we get together collectively and you send out that energy, we're fighting for her. Wherever she's at, she feels this. I know it. Like, I feel that. I'm like, my mom knows, and a lot of the things, I was told, you have to, your mom is probably watching everything that you're doing. Your mom, they're probably using that as a form of torture. Look what your kid is doing. Look, she's crying on TV again. So I take these moments and they're not only just to bring up awareness, but for any victims that might be watching this, to know that you do have maybe a perfect stranger that's going just as hard or harder for you than your own family or your friends or anyone, because people care about humanity. And as humans, if we come to, that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it comes down to compassion. That's what it comes down to. The first order has to be compassion. Every decision you make has to start with compassion as the leading reason for the decision. It can't be anything else. It can't be money. It can't be anything. It just has to start with compassion. And that's what you
Yeah.
said a few minutes ago. You need an active audience, not an inactive audience. And you see that a lot in sports, when the
Together.
stadium's filled and the audience is really part of the team, they're really involved. The other team just loses, they just lose. I mean, you've got 100,000 people rallying with one voice. It gets to you. It doesn't matter how professional you are, it gets to you. And you're not at your 100% anymore, and you lose. And you see that often. But then you go to other stadiums and they're booing their own team. And you're like, what kind of morale is your team going to have to fight, right? Even if they're down, like, come on. So that's what you need here. You need a team that's active in the sense that they're rallying behind you, they're supporting you, they're giving you what you want, what you need to make this greater and bigger, and raise this kind of awareness. Like the stats I just threw out, it's still boggling my mind. I still can't. I'm waiting for somebody to call me back and say, no, Ali, you're wrong. It's not 3. That was a misprint on the 15 websites that you saw. They all misprinted it. It's really 200 people, and I'll be like, oh, thank God. But I know that's not going to happen. So that's what we're going to do. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's difficult. I know it's hard. I know you've said the same story over and over, and you say it not because you want the fame or you want to be on another show or anything like that. You say it because you're going to tell the story over and over and over a million times if you have to, for even one more person to listen or one more person to do something about it. So I really appreciate your resilience. I really appreciate your dedication. I wish every parent had kids like you who love them to the point where they're thrown away their lives just to see their mom again one more day. So it's an honor knowing you. It's an honor being part of this, and it's a duty to be part of this. And I feel everybody in our community is going to feel the same obligation to do something about it, even if, like you said, if it's just one click on your social media link or anything to let more people know, all the way to saying, hey, how much do you need? I'm going to fund this whole thing because I believe in this. Whatever range you're in between those two places, you're going to do something. So thank you, Zoey Lopez, for your time. And we're all praying for you here. And we're here to help, and we are going to help. We're going to have everything up soon to be able to support you with this episode. And for everybody watching, hearing, please join Zoey's media and stay in touch with her and try to communicate. And this isn't about us. I don't care if you come to Compassiviste and donate there on the link, or if you go to her GoFundMe or wherever. The point is to help the situation. So whichever method you're using, it's just there. We're just a microphone. That's all we're trying to help. So please go out there and help in this situation. And Zoey, we'll have you back.